guilty, guilty of dreaming of you. What can I do? What can I say after I've taken the blame? You say you're through, you'll go your way, but I'll always feel the same. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, loving you, dear, like I do. If it's a crime, then I'm guilty, guilty of loving you.
You go to my head, and you linger like a haunting refrain, and I find you spinning round in my brain, like the bubbles in a glass of champagne.
I know a little cowslip and a pretty flower too, who wished she was a bluebell and had a robe of blue. What would you think of a girl who began one of her earliest attempts at writing at the tender age of 11 with those very words? Well, I should hope you think rather kindly of her, because I am that girl who grew up to become reputedly, after the Bible and Shakespeare, the most widely published author in the world. Called me Queen of Crime. I've been rather shy in public my whole life, but at this moment I can hardly think of anything that has made me happier than to finally meet you in person and to introduce myself as Agatha Christie. Please come in, have a seat, make yourself comfortable. Oh, yes, I predominantly wrote murder mysteries, and more on murder mysteries in a moment. But allow me to tell you that between my birth in 1890 and my death in 1976, I wrote on average a book a year throughout my 85 years of life. Well, more than one family around the world looked forward to another Christmas with Christie as each publication approached. Now, if you'll indulge me, we have about an hour before I must go out again, and I'd like to take that time to tell you a bit about myself that you may not know, and to bring alive again some of the words I wrote. But for starters, shall we have tea? Queen of Crime, pouring my own tea. Oh, my dears, this life of mine, of being Agatha Christie, well, it's been more than writing about murder and poison and mustachioed detectives. Oh, I did that too. But I was not always the old lady you may have seen in pictures. I was once young, such as you, and I wasn't just sitting in some dusty libraries having a cup of tea, dreaming up adventures. No, I had them. I traveled the world to exotic locales like Baghdad and Iraq and the River Nile and even Hawaii. I was born Agatha Mary Clarissa Miller in the country of England, in the Shire of Devon, in the town of Torquay by the English Channel. Oh, how I love to swim. And growing up around all these tourists, always coming and going and going and coming. And maybe that's why I love to go. I mean, can you imagine me in Honolulu riding a surfboard? The very first woman to do so. Or helping archaeologists push their carts out of the mud in Iraq. Indeed, I have done it all and more. And despite being a rather spoiled child, I went home. I had the most loving nanny, Nursey, and a host of jolly grannies and aunties that lived not too far away. And not to mention a big-hearted cook, Jane. Oh, she filled me with cream cakes and cream teas and a lifelong propensity for, well, filling. Cake? No? Oh, well, pardon me. My mother, Clara, was English. But did you know that my father, Mr. Frederick Alva Miller, was American? Despite that, a very agreeable man. He was a man of independent means. He provided a middle-class, most comfortable upbringing, perhaps even indulgent. Ah, but my mother, Clara, dear Mummy Clara, I have written about her. She was an enigmatic personality, more forceful than my father, but also miserably shy with a natural melancholy. Mummy was always trying on various religions and philosophies, and she was remarkably intuitive, perhaps even psychic. She viewed the world with a mystic turn of mind. She could be startling. She once told me a bedtime story about a poisonous candle. And I shall never forget that bedtime story.
We were Agatha's only siblings, Monty.
Madge.
We were more than a decade our seniors.
And often away at boarding schools.
So that Agatha was brought up almost like an only child.
Her loneliness,
plus our mother's ways, must have contributed to Agatha's attraction at an early age to make-believe.
Mummy sent us all through boarding schools, but when the little one came along, she somehow turned against the formal education of young girls and forbade Agatha from even learning to read before she was 8.
So I, the little one, taught myself to read by age 5. I suppose it's because nearly all children nowadays go to school and have things arranged for them that they seem so forlornly unable to produce their own ideas.
But Agatha did seem to inherit something important from our mummy.
And from our grandmother, too.
Yes, they seem to pass along to her almost a family gene of having a keen sense of observation, of even dissection of human nature.
Watching people. Watching people became my entertainment. It inspired me. When I became known as a writer, I didn't like to be interviewed and I didn't really speak about my process, but I will tell you, I did write a bit about it in the foreword of one of my novels. Here we are, A Body in the Library. This one had my favorite recurring character, Miss Jane Marple.
Ah, the village spinster, plain, unassuming Jane Marple, just an home gardener. And I invariably turned out to be most surprisingly shrewd, a remarkably cognizant amateur sleuth.
Miss Marple employed her observation of small-town life, some would say nosiness,
Natural inquisitiveness.
to draw astute parallels in solving seemingly unsolvable murders. Oh, pardon me. As Miss Marple herself said,
I'm a horror at digressing.
now, back to a body in the library. Now, where did I find characters for Miss Marple to watch? Allow me to read what I wrote. Staying one summer at a fashionable seaside hotel, I observed one family at one of the tables in the dining room. An elderly man, a cripple, in a wheelchair, and with him was a female of the younger generation. Oh, fortunately, they left the next day so my imagination could get to work unhampered by any kind of knowledge.
Now, do you put real people in your books?
For me, it's quite impossible to write about anyone that I know, or indeed have ever spoken to, or have ever even heard of. For some reason, for me, it kills them stone dead.
Oh, excuse the metaphor.
But I can take a lay figure and endow it with qualities and imaginings of my own. So an older man and a younger female from that hotel sighting became the pivot of my story. Oh, in the manner of a cookery recipe, add the following ingredients. A tennis pro, a young dancer, an artist, a girl guide, a dance hostess, and serve it all up a la Miss Marple in a body in the library.
Oh, dear me, I wonder who that could be. This early in the morning, I'm barely up myself. It must be a wrong number. Yes? Oh, why, yes, this is Jane. You're up very early, Dolly. Oh, my dear, what awful thing has just happened? You've just found a body in the library. You found a what? Oh, I know. One doesn't believe it, does one? I mean, one thinks they only happen in books. But whose body is it? It's a blonde. A what? A blonde. A beautiful blonde? Like the books again. None of you have ever seen her before. She's just lying there in the library, dead. And that's why I've got to come up at once. Oh, you want me to come up? Oh, you're sending the car down for me. Oh, of course, dear, if you think I can be of any comfort to you and the Colonel. Oh, you don't want comfort. Oh, I'm so good at bodies. Oh, no, indeed. My little successes have been mostly theoretical. But you think I'm very good at murders. She has been murdered. Strangled? Oh, you feel that if one's got to have a murder in one's house, one may as well enjoy it, if I know what you mean. And that's why you want me to come up and help you find out who did it and unravel the mystery and all that. Oh, it is rather thrilling, isn't it? Well, of course, my dear, if I can be of any help to you. Good advice is always certain to be ignored, but that's no reason why we shouldn't give it anyway. Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, yes. I know your husband, the Colonel, Dolly. And you say Arthur's Yes, the Colonel is being rather difficult. He seems to think you shouldn't enjoy yourself about it at all. Well, of course you do know it's very sad and all that, but then you didn't know the girl. And when I've seen her, I'll understand what you mean when you say she doesn't look real at all. Yes, I will. Goodbye, Dolly.
Now, let's all applaud Miss Marple as she gets dressed and ready to solve another mystery. Death, as Dolly told Jane in her call, when people die, they usually don't look real at all. I was only 11. My father died. My mother had known him since she was 10. Most of father's fortune had been lost now due to his bad investments. My brother Monty squandered the rest. Anyhow, Monty was off in India somewhere with the army. And my sister Madge, the one who first dared me to write a mystery story better than the one she had read me, she had her own family by then. So it was only Mum and I alone after Father's death. We were no longer a family. We were now two people living together. Middle-aged woman and an untried, naive girl. Well, naive was my own word choice, but allow me to tell you that I did get to go to France for finishing school. Something you may not know about me. I had 2 husbands. In 1912, when I was just 22 and he just 23, I met a dashing young aviator named Archie Christie. Can you imagine his daring to be a pilot less than 12 years after the Wright brothers' first flight of only 12 seconds? Well, never you mind, Archie. The year before we met, I had already taken a ride in an aeroplane at a county fair. You know, I always remember him looking different. Younger, maybe? Oh, Archie, we can't hear you. Archie.
World War I interfered with wedding plans for Agatha and me.
Not to mention lack of money.
The Royal Flying Air Corps dispatched me to France while Agatha stayed home and found work in a hospital.
During both World Wars, I worked as a pharmacy assistant and picked up some chemical backgrounds and helped in some future poisonous plot lines.
We married during my brief home leave on Christmas Eve, 1914. But it wasn't until 4 years later that I was finally posted home to London for good.
And much worse from the rigors of war, believe me.
I left the service for a job touring the world, soliciting support for the 1924 British Empire Exhibition in London. My employer,
A former school headmasters of Archie's,
paid both our ways around the world to all sorts of adventure.
including surfboarding. When we got home, we bought property outside of a London golf course. I tried my hand at golf, less than successfully. Meanwhile, Mr. Christie began making rounds of another sort with another female golfer. He moved into the clubhouse, and that was the end for me and Archie, the golfing pilot. We divorced in 28. He married his putting partner, a Miss Nancy Neal. Remember that name. Everyone told me, follow your heart. Well, I did, and it got broken. I was overwrought at first, but by that time I had published a handful of books as Agatha Christie. I had a literary agent and I could fend for myself. So to clear my head of golf balls and other personal matters, I took off again, this time on my own to parts unknown, like Iraq and Istanbul, and riding a train called the Orient Express. My travels brought me more inspiration for my novel, as well as the occasional bedbug or two, and a new husband, a Mr. Max Mallowan. He was an archaeologist, first introduced to act as my guide.
He married in 1930. She used the name Agatha Christie Mallowan on some of her books and enthusiastically collaborated with me on my Middle Eastern digs.
I especially love photography.
Agatha also wrote a few romantic novels, 6. Her publishers wanted her to write only books about crime. For the romances, she used the pseudonym Mary Westmacott. Her second name was Mary, and Westmacott was some distant relative's family name. The public was clueless. Christie and Mary Westmacott were the same writer for almost 20 years until a newspaper columnist revealed it. Now, back to the Middle East, where we can find a happy couple still exploring together.
For all that digging, Max was eventually knighted.
And for all that writing, Agatha was bestowed the highest honor a woman could receive in England when she was named a dame.
Max was 14 years younger than me. But the good thing about being married to an archaeologist, the older I got, the more valuable I was to him. Oh. Well, my shovel-wielding knight.
And his dusty old dame.
Like most Brits of the day, Max and I loved listening to radio dramatizations. Can you almost imagine hearing again one of my stories acted out? This time with perhaps that most famous character of mine. I'll admit to dreaming up is inspired by many Belgian immigrants that I met during the wars. That priggish, fastidious, intrusive inspector of a man, whom the public, who loved him when I no longer did, they wouldn't let me leave off. I had him killed in one of my books. And why? He became the only fictional character to get an obituary on the front page of the New York Times. Well, I grew to love him. After all, he made me my living.
I'm back, Madame Christie.
Hercule Poirot.
How about a glass of champagne now?
Coming to you live from the British Broadcasting Studios, an encore presentation of Poirot Tells a Story by Dame Agatha Christie, with Victoria Casey as Miss Petherick, Stuart Lawrence Frazier as Hercule Poirot, and yours truly, Robert James, as Mr. Rhodes.
Oh, the first I knew of this business was one evening about 9 o'clock when Gwen, you remember Gwen, my little maid with the red hair. Yes, Gwen came in and told me,
A Miss Petherick and a gentleman have called to see you, my dear.
well, bring in the cherry brandy and some glasses, and I will meet them in the drawing room.
Now, Miss Petherick has been a friend of Poirot for many years. She introduces her cousin, a Mr. Rhodes. Now, Poirot immediately recognizes Rhodes's manner as most peculiar. Poirot might have called it rude if he hadn't realized that the poor fellow was suffering from strain.
Miss Petherick, a brandy?
Oh, thank you, mon ami.
And you, Mr. Rhodes, a brandy. Huh? Mr. Rhodes?
Hey, no.
Well, if Mr. Rhodes is, how you say, perhaps feeling ill, eh?
Ill. I expect to die of a broken neck in a few months' time.
Oh dear. Well, Miss Patrick, can you explain the reason for your visit?
What I brought my cousin, Mr. Rhodes, here for is a consultation.
A consultation?
A consultation. You see, Mr. Rhodes is about to be arrested for the murder of his wife, the late Mrs. Rhodes, and Miss Patrick has brought him to see Poirot for his insight into a possible defense for him to save him from a hanging. Rhodes, a newcomer to Poirot, remains unconvinced of the former inspector's value to him.
I am highly skeptical of this Monsieur Poirot being of any use.
Mr. Rhodes, sit back down, please.
Still, if the gentleman will hear my story, I will tell it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Please, proceed, eh?
My wife, Mrs. Rhodes, and I had been staying at the Crown Hotel in Barnchester.
Only about 20 miles away.
Yes.
We occupied adjoining rooms with the connecting inner door. Frankly, she is, well, she was a bit of a hypochondriac, so she retired to her room immediately after dinner. I'd settled down in my adjoining room to work in my book on prehistoric flints. At 11 o'clock, I tidied up my papers.
On prehistoric flint?
Prehistoric flints. Glanced into my wife's room to make sure there was nothing she wanted before going to bed myself. I discovered the electric light on, and she was lying in bed, stabbed through the heart.
Mon Dieu!
His wife had been dead at least an hour, probably longer. There was a separate door in Mrs. Rhodes' room that was leading directly into the corridor from there. That door was locked and bolted from the inside. In addition, the only window in her room was closed and latched from the inside as well. According to Mr. Rhodes, nobody had passed through the room in which the weapon found in the wound was a stiletto dagger, which had been lying on Mrs. Rhodes's dressing table.
She was in the habit of using it as a paper knife.
Oh, convenient.
There were no fingerprints on it.
And the chambermaid?
Yes, Mary Hill. Mary Hill is a local woman. I've been a chambermaid here at the Crown, right here on the second floor for 10 years. There's no reason why I should commit a sudden assault on a guest. Oh, the chambermaid Mary Hill is, in any case, extraordinarily stupid, almost half-witted. Her story has never varied. I brought the lady her hot water bottles, and right away she was off to sleep. Frankly, I cannot believe, and I am sure no jury would believe, that she committed the crime.
Anything else, Mr. Rhodes?
Witnesses of a sort.
Oh, how curious. Please, go on, Mr. Rhodes.
At the head of the staircase up the second floor in the Crown Hotel is a kind of miniature lounge.
Where people sometimes sit and have coffee. Now, personally, I
want to get a cup of coffee.
Not have sugar and cream. It's just not drinkable.
Aye. A passage goes off to the right from the coffee lounge, and the last door of the passage is the door to the room I occupied. The passage then turns sharply right again, and the first door around the corner is the door of my wife's room.
As it happened, both these doors could be seen by witnesses.
And the authorities interview them.
Yes, the first door to Mr. Rhodes' room could be seen by 4 people who were having coffee. Now, personally,
When it comes to coffee, you cannot love it.
according to them, nobody went through the door except the chambermaid.
As to the other door around the corner, my wife's door, there's an electrician by it, and he swears no one came into the exited through that door. except the chambermaid.
As the police investigation, you say, has definitively ruled out the chambermaid, Miss Patrick. On the face of it, Mr. Rhodes, it looks as though you must have murdered your wife.
Well, Miss Patrick.
Shh.
And now, viewers, we are going to have a short 3-minute intermission. Do not touch your mouse. Do not touch your dial. Leave your video playing just as it is, and we will see you in 3 minutes. Welcome back, viewers. And now for the thrilling conclusion of Poirot Tells a Story.
Loving you, dear, like I do.
As it happened, both these doors could be seen by witnesses.
And the authorities interview them.
Yes, the first door to Mr. Rhodes' room could be seen by 4 people having coffee. Now, personally,
Coffee.
according to them, nobody went through the door except the chambermaid.
I see the door right in the corner. My wife's door, there's an electrician by it, and he also swears nobody entered or left through that door, except the chambermaid.
As the police investigation, you say, has definitively ruled out the chambermaid, Miss Patrick. On the face of it, Mr. Rhodes, it looks as though you must have murdered your wife.
Miss Patrick.
Shh. Tell Monsieur Perrault about the threatening letters.
Oh, letters?
Frankly, I never believed it. I thought Amy, my wife, made most of it up. Amy was one of those romantic liars who go through life embroidering everything that happens to them. If she slipped on a banana peel, it was a case of near escape from death. Her tale is to some woman whose child she had injured in a motor accident who vowed vengeance on her. Well, I'd simply not taken any notice of it. This supposed incident happened before we were married, and although she read me letters couched in crazy language, I had suspected her of composing them herself.
S'il vous plaît, Monsieur Rhodes. Some cherry brandy, perhaps.
Thank you. Merci.
Do you know if there had been any other women staying by themselves at the hotel?
Two, but no one had seen either of them near the scene of the crime, and there was nothing to connect either of them with it in any way.
Description.
Yes, one moment, please. The constable reported there were two. A Mrs. Granby, an Anglo-Indian widow having reddish hair untidily done, 50 years of age, clothes rather picturesque, made mostly of native silk, etc., etc. And Miss Carruthers, now a rather horsey spinster who dropped her G's, such as I'm coming and going and looking. She was about 40, wore pince-nez, those spectacles that have a little spring on the bridge that pinches them onto her nose. Now, Miss Carruthers had close-cropped hair like a man and wore mannish coats and skirts, it was reported.
Dear me, this does make it very difficult.
And, pardon me, Mr. Rhodes, but Monsieur Perrault, Mr. Rhodes really can't believe that his wife killed herself.
Right, she wasn't that kind of woman.
I have to believe him. Historical people don't usually commit suicide.
Did the door from Mrs. Rhodes' bedroom lead straight into the corridor?
Nah. There was a little hallway with a lavatory and a washstand on the left side before you went out of her suite into the corridor.
Well, in that case, this whole thing seems remarkably simple.
What?
Another drink, Mr. Rhodes?
Listen, you daft Belgian, perhaps you haven't quite appreciated the difficulties.
Yes, I think I have. There are but four possibilities. Either Mrs. Rhodes was killed by her husband, or by the chambermaid, or she committed suicide, or she was killed by an outsider whom nobody saw enter or leave.
That's impossible. Nobody could go through my room without my seeing them, and even if they managed to come in through my wife's room without the electrician seeing them, how the devil could they get out, leaving the door locked and bolted from the inside?
Mr. Rhodes, what did the chambermaid look like?
I'm not sure. She was tallish. I don't really recall.
Miss Patrick, what did authorities report the chambermaid look like?
Of medium height with fairish hair and blue eyes.
Well, the authorities are a better observer than I am.
I venture to disagree, Mr. Rhodes. Could you describe the maid in my house? She ushered you in, served us. Miss Patrick, could you? Miss Patrick? Could you describe the maid, please? I guess not. But don't you see what that means? You both came full of your own affairs, and the person who let you in was only a parlor maid. The same applies to Mr. Rhodes at the hotel. You saw the woman's uniform, Mr. Rhodes, and you saw her apron, but you were so engrossed in your work. But the police interviewed that same woman, this hotel maid, Mary Eel, in a very different capacity. The authorities have looked at her as a person, and that is what the woman who did the murder counted upon.
How do you think it went, Monsieur Perrault?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. The hotel chambermaid came in by Mr. Rogers' door, passed through his room into Mrs. Rogers' room with the hot water bottle. Now, X, as I will call our suspect, came in by Mrs. Rogers' door, which was now unlocked, and concealed herself in the lavatory until the chambermaid was long gone and the coast seemed clear. X then entered Mrs. Rogers' bedroom, took the stiletto from the dressing table she had doubtless explored from earlier in the day, went up to the bed, stabbed the dozing woman, wiped the handle of the stiletto, locked and bolted Mrs. Rogers' door from the inside, and then passed out through the adjoining room where Mr. Rhodes was working on prehistoric flints, was it not?
Yeah, prehistoric flints, but I should have seen her, and the electrician would have seen her go in.
Not if she were dressed as a chambermaid, huh? You were so engrossed in your work that out of the tail of your eye, you saw a chambermaid come in, go into your wife's room, and come back through your room.
Ah, it was the same type of dress, but not the same woman.
And that's what the people who were having coffee.
Oh,
Oh,
coffee. I mean,
Coffee, I
I know.
Coffee, and then I gotta get
Cream
out.
and sugar.
That is exactly what they saw. They saw a chambermaid go in and a chambermaid go out. The electrician in the hallway around the corner, excusez-moi, they around the corner by Mrs. Rogers' door also saw the same, a chambermaid go out and in, not recognizing that they were two different persons.
Right, well, then who was she, this X?
Well, that's going to be a little difficult, isn't it? Either Mrs. Granby or Miss Carruthers.
As my creator, Dame Christie, said, unless you are good at guessing, it is not much use being a detective. Mrs. Granby sounds as though she might wear a wig normally, so she would wear her own hair as a chambermaid. On the other hand, Miss Carruthers, with her close-cropped mannish hair, might easily put on a wig to play a part. Personally, I incline myself to think it will be Miss Carruthers.
Hey, my dear Perrault, however do you think it was more likely to be Carruthers than Granby?
Well, it was the G's.
The G's.
You said authorities told you that Carruthers dropped her G's.
Yes, the G's.
Now that's done by a lot of hunting people or hunting people in books, but I don't know many people who do it in reality these days. And certainly no one under 60. You said Carruthers was 40.
Yes.
Those dropped G's sound to me like a woman who was playing a part.
And overdoing it.
Exactement.
And really, my dears, it was Carruthers. That was a false name. Mrs. Rhodes, a most reckless driver, had run over her little girl, and it had driven the poor woman quite out of her head. She had been following Mrs. Rhodes for some time and had written her distinctly insane letters, which Mr. Rose chose not to believe due to his wife's precarious personality. So, when the false hair and the maid's dress and the truth were revealed, Carruthers confessed and was taken away at once. And as for our Mr. Rhodes,
I've married again, such a nice, sensible girl. And we've got a wee little one now.
Oh.
And what do you think? Perrault, would you be the godfather?
well, at the end of that radio drama, we ought to applaud them. Now, recalling Perrault, when I penned The Murder of Roger Ackroyd in 1926 as a Hercule Poirot mystery, Even though it wasn't his first appearance, it was highly notorious because I wrote it so that the narrator's narration was called into question. And I mean, if you can't trust the narrator, who can you trust? Anyway, the murder of Roger Ackroyd and that Hercule Poirot essentially thrust me into fame and launched my career. And why did I have such a career?
The Guinness Book of World Records determined Christie to be the best-selling novelist of all time, with around 3 billion books sold worldwide. And that was even before Audible.
As I once told someone about writing, I'm an incredible sausage machine, a perfect sausage machine. I always think it must end soon, and then when another one comes along, I'm so happy that I realize it's not so hard to think of something new after all. My stories, they tied up thorny little problems into neat little packages by the end, and well, that's not like life. And maybe that's why people like them, you think. And how did I build such intricate devices, you ask?
Well, I'll tell you. My Dame Agatha was in the habit of keeping notebooks all over the house, one next to the bed, one under the chair cushion, one in the kitchen, and so on.
I've always thought that the best time to plan a book was while you're doing the dishes.
When an idea or character she might use comes into her head, she just reaches over, handwrites a note to herself for later use in the nearest notebook.
Which is also handy for important dates, household budgets, and shopping lists.
Let's see. 1 head of lettuce, 2 liters of milk, half dozen eggs, and 10 little Indians.
10 Little Indians you may know now as the title, And Then There Were None. It was my best-selling novel. And then came the play and the motion picture of it. And speaking of plays that I wrote, in 1947, when Her Royal Highness Queen Mary, the grandmother of the current monarch Elizabeth, was asked what program she would like broadcast on BBC radio for her birthday, well, fully expecting the good Queen Mum to say Shakespeare or opera, her response was, "We should prefer to hear an Agatha Christie mystery." So, for my royal fan, I dashed off a short radio play and titled it 3 Blind Mice. It's an original title, isn't it? And I later expanded it for the London stage in 1952. And tonight, The Mousetrap, as it was retitled, is still playing on the London stage. No, not tonight, it's not playing, but for a nearly 7-decade run, much to my surprise, it was nearly uninterrupted 7-decade run. And well, if you would like me to reveal the ending of the longest continuously running play in history, well, keep on liking. In fact, I stipulated that not a television nor motion picture be made of it until it closed in London. So you might want to plan a trip, but not right now. Do not plan a trip. Stay home. Stay home. But speaking of trips, I have been to Hollywood. You may have seen pictures of me on the set of the filming of the motion picture of my original play, A Witness for the Prosecution. Oh, there were Charles Lawton and his wife, Elsa Lanchester, Academy Award nominations for those two, and Best Picture. And I met the rest of the cast, Mr. John Williams and Tyrone Power and Marlene Dietrich. And I have always appreciated Billy Wilder's faithful adaptation of my play, about a seemingly loyal war bride, Miss Christine Vole, played by Dietrich. She would do anything to save her husband from being hanged for the murder of another woman. Or would she turn on her husband and become a witness for the prosecution? Leonard Vole, the part played by Tyrone Power, has already been arrested and charged for murdering a female friend. It is thought when Christine Vole shows up at the law offices for her first interrogation by the defense team. Action.
My dear Mrs. Vole, I am afraid we have rather bad news for you.
Don't be afraid, Sir Wilfred. I'm quite disciplined.
Now, there's nothing to be alarmed about as of yet.
Leonard has been arrested and charged with the murder of Mrs. French. Is that it? I knew he would be. I told him so. I knew that Leonard had been seeing Mrs. French quite frequently. I knew it from the day he came home with a pair of green socks she had knitted for him.
Well, that's quite natural, and I'm sure a jury will find it rather endearing.
Oh, Leonard can be very endearing. He hates that particular shade of green, and the socks were 2 sizes too small, but he wore them just the same, just to give her pleasure. Leonard has a way with women.
Now, Mrs. Vole, you realize that Mrs. French left your husband money.
Yes, a lot of money.
Of course, he had no previous knowledge of this bequest.
Is that what he told you?
Oh, Mrs. Vole, surely you're not suggesting anything different.
I do not suggest anything.
Quite obviously, Mrs. French had come to look upon your husband as a son, or perhaps as a favorite nephew.
You think Mrs. French looked upon Leonard as a son or a nephew?
I do. An understandable and entirely natural relationship.
What hypocrite you are in this country. Oh, I shock you. I'm so sorry. Let us say an aunt by all means.
Now, did you say that the socks Mrs. French knitted for your husband were 2 sizes too small?
At least.
Well, would that not indicate that she thought of him as a small boy, a nephew, for instance?
It indicates she did not know how to knit.
Mrs. Vole, you realize your husband's entire defense rests on his word and yours.
I realize that.
Now, on the night of the murder, your husband came home before 9:30. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
In fact, he remembers that he was precisely 9:26.
9:26.
Then it's true, he was home with you at 9:26.
Precisely.
And he did not go out again.
Leonard came home at 9:26 and did not go out again. Isn't that what he wants me to say?
Isn't it the truth?
Of course.
You are aware, of course, that when I put you in the witness box, you will be sworn and you will have to testify under oath.
Leonard came home at precisely 9:26 and did not go out again. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Is that better?
Mrs. Vole, do you love your husband?
Leonard thinks I do.
Well, do you?
Am I already under oath?
Mrs. Vole, whatever your gambit may be today, do you know that under British law, you cannot be called to give testimony damaging to your husband?
How very convenient.
We are dealing with a capital crime here. The prosecution will try to hang your husband.
He is not my husband. We went through a form of marriage in Hamburg, but I had a husband living at the time somewhere in East Germany in the Russian zone.
Did you tell Leonard?
It would have been stupid to tell him. He would have not married me, and I would have been left behind to starve in the rubble.
Your husband loves you, does he not?
Leonard, he worships the ground I walk on.
And you?
You want to know too much. Auf Wiedersehen, gentlemen.
That woman is up to something. But what?
The prosecution will break her down in no time if I put her in the witness box. You know, defending this case is going to be rather like a fox hunt, and we're the foxes.
Well, if you want to know what happens, read it, see it, stream it on the Amazons, or even see a live Zoom play. If you want to know more about the mysteries of my own life, however, well, that has been a subject on which I have been rather taciturn. Google it. After Archie Christie and I were married, you remember Archie, my golfing pilot? Well, we had our first and only child named Rosalind, after Shakespeare's heroine in As You Like It. Well, as you know, at this time, Archie ran off to the links with Miss Neal. About the same time, my mummy Clara died. Left alone, without Archie, and to close up mummy's house and all those memories. And well, I kissed baby Rosalind goodbye. And I left her in the care of her governess, and I drove away from it all. This is true. This is not a work of fiction.
Her car was found abandoned and empty on a rural road in the middle of nowhere.
She had walked from there to a local spa, sequestered herself in the hotel.
I had signed in as Miss Neal, Archie's girlfriend's name.
She remained alone, hidden from the public.
Hidden from everyone, more than a week passed.
Agatha never dreaming.
That the police,
Aeroplanes.
Dogs.
even her contemporaries in mystery writing, like Dorothy Sayers.
And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who created Sherlock Holmes.
Psychics, the press worldwide.
Even my Archie hunted me.
He even made the New York Times.
We were band members at the hotel.
Of course, we heard of Agatha Christie's disappearance. It was everywhere.
And then we thought we recognized the lady right there. So we reported to the police, and shortly after that, she was whisked away.
Photographs on front pages of newspapers. Back to the hubbub of London, of life, of me. I'd always hated notoriety of any kind, and now I had such a dose of it that there were times when I felt I could hardly bear to go on living, and everyone had a theory.
Personal strain.
An Asiatic fugue.
Obviously a publicity stunt.
A plot for her next book?
A stab at her failed marriage to Archie.
I felt like a fox hunted, my earths dug up and yelping hounds following me everywhere. Oh, they hounded me for more. But I have never made a public statement about it, nor spoke of it in my autobiography, and I never spoke of my vacation, and neither will I today. In everybody's life, there are hidden chapters which we hope may never be known. This alone is mine, and must remain the one Christie mystery forever unsolved. But I invite you to discover again all those mysteries that you can join in solving with Hercule Poirot and Jane Marple and Tommy and Tuppence and all the rest of my creations. And to quote my favorite Miss Marple one last time. Now, I do hope you don't think I've been going on too long. And finally, in departing from you, I must thank you for giving me this occasion to recall my happiest times and some of my challenges too. I have stated honestly, and I will tell you again today, that I like living. I have been wildly, acutely, miserably racked with sorrow, but through it all, I know quite certainly that being alive is a grand thing. And if you will bear with me one more moment, I will leave you with a nugget of what I have written. Life seems to me to consist of 3 parts: the absorbing and usually enjoyable present, which rushes from minute to minute at fatal speed; the future, dim and uncertain, and for one, anyone can make a number of interesting plans. The more wild and improbable, the better. Since nothing else will turn out as you expected, you might as well have fun in the planning of it. And thirdly, the past. That the memories, the realities, the bedrock that are one's present life, brought back by a sudden scent, the shape of a hill, an old song, some triviality which makes one suddenly say, with peculiar and quite playful pleasure, I remember.
Beach, you're muted again.
And it's the end of show. Thank you. If you can open your mics and your videos, we will see you in the main room. Some people decided to bow out, but there's a few here. Maybe.
It says I cannot start the video because the host has stopped it.
Okay.
Carrie, who is that?
Dear Carrie.
It's my cat Lakin. This was his first play ever, so
Oh,
I think he enjoyed it. Oh, he's dead now.
Good.
hello, Mayor Cavalier.
Hello. What a great way to spend an evening.
Oh, that yes, in front of your fire, especially.
Gorgeous.
Oh, is that guy Nelson? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Hi. Oh, what a thrill from California.
Wow, what time is it there?
Martin, can you turn on your stuff?
Hearing it's real gargly over here. I can't hear too good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Like there's a little bit of a Rob,
Well,
I love your pet.
It's
I thought
traveling
about getting my kids
4
one.
times. So.
Hey guys, first of all, let me just say I'm so sorry. My screen totally froze in that Petherick. Thank God I only had a couple of lines, but here's what was on my screen. I was totally alive and, moving. Everybody else was frozen. So I didn't know what was happening. And so then by the time you all started moving again, it was the next page, which was fine. So it was only a couple of lines that got dropped, and then another time, like on a break, I ran out and told Al, don't touch the sudden link because something's happening with my internet, but he didn't. But so I don't know what caused it, but that was the problem. And then a couple of times Mandy froze, which, kind of threw me off because I wasn't sure, what was happening next. And so anyway, sorry about that. I don't know why. But it did. It didn't do it last night, but it did tonight.
On our screen,
Frozen is a different play.
On our screen, the actors were fine. You froze at a very good time, as if you were in fog.
Oh, so on your screen, I was frozen.
Yes.
And the rest continued.
Interesting.
Said,
Because I was totally alive on mine and everybody else was frozen.
It looked like maybe Miss Petherick was lost in reverie, or maybe had gotten drunk and was not.
Yeah, because I just was going, well, guess I'll just wait till something happens. That's all I knew to do.
Well,
that's a problem because nobody.
We appreciate Carrie and Guy and Ann, and there
Thank
were
you.
people here. Some have not turned
Thank
on
you.
their camera, or they have left the scene, and some are over on YouTube that we can't see right now. But we really appreciate your being here. Well, how do you like it, Mayor Cavalier?
Well, I enjoyed it. I was particularly thrilled that it was Agatha Christie. As a very young girl, I've always been a voracious reader. As a very young girl, I fell in love with Agatha Christie's work. And I believe, I won't swear to it, but I believe I've read every book.
Wow.
You like at least 85.
And I probably have most of them downstairs in the library.
Did you read any of the Westmacott books?
No, I didn't. That was something I learned today.
Yeah, I would like to read them.
Of course, I was not into romance novels then. Really, I'm not now. I absolutely love murder mysteries.
Right.
And I have to say that Miss Marple, as a young girl, Miss Marple was a great role model for me. The actor, not so much. He was not my favorite. Sorry, Miss Christie, Dame Christie. I understand as a young girl where our role models and the professions we could have were laid out as secretary, nurse, and teacher, right? And here was this person who solved mysteries and got involved, and people listened to her. So she was a big part of my life growing up. You all did a fabulous job with it too. You really
Thank
helped
you.
my attention. And my husband Fred fixed dinner while we got this started, so I had sort of dinner theater.
Oh, that's cool.
And Tori, tell the mayor what our plan was. In fact, we may end up doing it at their Gateway Center, which has a stage and a kitchen in it, which is where the city hall is now in Smithers. But tell her our plan for the future.
Well, we were going to do it in April at the Women's Club. I can't think of the name of it now, Beach, but it used to be the Women's Club. Long Center, yeah. And they've got the stage in there, and they have the round tables, and we were going to have tea and like little biscuits or cookies, and have the people wear a hat if they wanted to, but have it like on a Sunday afternoon, like an afternoon tea, and then do it at that time and for kind of a fundraiser for our Shakespeare studio. And so anyway, we do hope to perform it live. Because it was written to be performed live, of course, and so we still.
I'd settle for performing anything live nowadays.
Yeah, right. Oh,
But
yeah.
this would be really fun to do
scary.
live.
Yeah, this is really scary. I mean, scary.
With the red earphones is an active actress in the Valley, and she's
a fantastic actress. She got fantastic.
Even though
award-winning,
the things froze and the musical director played the wrong songs, and there were tiny little glitches. But how did you think they did with rehearsing and never even meeting each other in person?
Well, I watched it last night too on YouTube, and I have to say, I think I prefer Zoom. It's just such an interesting concept, and there were moments where, like, specifically, Tori would like look off to the one side of the screen, and Mandy was there, and I was like, that's kind of neat. It's like they're actually like talking to each other.
Right.
But
yes.
I thought it was definite chemistry. Like I was telling Rob even last night, like I thought it was really great, and that's why I wanted to see it again. But
cool.
I am excited to see it in person. If you all ever do it in person, I'll definitely be there.
Yeah, it will be a different show, in a lot of ways. So
coming soon to your local library.
I don't want to.
I wish I knew somebody who could hire somebody that knew how to form an app, because Zoom would plant the actors on different sides of the screen, and I had them looking at each other. But some nights they looked at each other and they would look away from each other because Zoom and YouTube just put people randomly. There must be some algorithm.
Now, once again, everyone is frozen but me.
And last night,
Everybody's frozen but me.
right now, well, we're not frozen.
Oh, now you're back. No, now you're back. But for a minute, everybody was frozen except me.
Well, it has to do with the bandwidth. It has to do with the, you know,
Yeah,
how
it must be.
computers are
Suddenlink.
in West Virginia, and there's all kinds of things that we can't really control.
I'm blaming Suddenlink.
But it was, sometimes I was just telling her, sometimes even tonight, sometimes your pictures were on different sides. We had practiced for months that you look this way and you see one person, you look this way, you see another person. Tonight, it moves your pictures around on the screen on YouTube and here. And sometimes, rather than be beside Mandy, you were on top of her. It was very bizarre. But you play this. But there was one rehearsal one night where they, and I don't know about tonight, where they passed the candle and it really looked like it passed to the screen.
Yeah, it looked good.
I know that the program isn't built for that kind of thing. And I think it's just, I do think it is interesting to try to expand it to Zoom, especially since no one's doing, well, the people that are doing live theater right now there's actors on stage, and a lot of the actors in the Valley still don't feel comfortable with that. So this is great though. And it's nice to enjoy it from your home. And
everybody's at home.
The Zoom part at the end of it was one of the other reasons.
If you go to tomorrow or even tonight, if you go to our YouTube channel, last night's program has been saved. Tonight's program will take a while to upload. But here's what the name of our channel is: Montgomery Shakespeare. There's no other words. Montgomery Shakespeare on YouTube, and it has a picture of the Earl Vickers Bridge across the canal in the valley. And you click on that, and then you've got to search around on that kind of YouTube site. You might have to go to videos or live or live streaming in the previous live streaming. You have to kind of click around and find the menu, but you will find Murder by the Book Saturday, that's last night, edited. And you can watch it again as just a YouTube, just like you watch Cats play the piano. You can watch Tori and Mandy act and freeze and unfreeze.
Well, are you going to leave Saturdays up and not save this one?
This one's being saved right now, but it'll take a while for it to be saved, I think.
Oh.
Now, Carrie,
last night's might have been better.
That one you can look at
it didn't
find it at Montgomery Shakespeare, YouTube Montgomery Shakespeare.
When I watched it last night on Zoom, I thought it was one of the reasons, when I watched it on YouTube last night, one of the reasons I wanted to watch it on Zoom tonight is I liked where you had everybody come on and talk about the show afterwards. I love that. And when I was watching on YouTube, I was like, this is a little voyeuristic to not be able to be like, you all did so good. I really liked it.
How did you feel, Stuart, about not having a live audience, or having a live audience but not hearing them?
I mean, it's definitely a strange feeling to, not sort of get that instant feedback, which is what I think most of us kind of thrive on. But I thought it was good. I thought everything went well. I didn't hear any boos, so that's good.
Yeah, that's the good part, right?
Yeah.
Both nights that you put that wig on, Stuart, I cracked up laughing so hard.
Yeah.
And the mustache falling off.
Yeah.
Love that part.
Went through a lot. It's been through a lot.
Like the Facebook, not Facebook, the Zoom. Even though the pictures did switch around, and so sometimes you were looking at the person you were talking to, and sometimes you weren't. I'm sure I'm the oldest of the group here, so I grew up listening to radio, murder mysteries on radio, and other shows on radio, and your imagination had to come up with what you could not see live. And so I like the fact that I got to sort of be a part of this, because my imagination had to fill in where Zoom was lacking. So I enjoyed it.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was good with only 4 actors. I know Beach would like to try a Shakespeare or, something with more actors is like, Oh my gosh, that is going to be scary. So.
I don't know, Mandy. How about just getting to know the person of Agatha Christie? Any comments?
Oh, well, we were, my Aunt Sandy watched it last night, and she came over today, and she was talking about, she's like, things that I never knew. It was like, oh, she just left her baby. That was one of the things, like, oh, she just left her baby, and learning about that, and I had known about her disappearing, and I'd always heard about that amnesiac fugue. That's what I'd always heard it was, that she didn't remember, she had lost her memory and disappeared. So getting to learn about that, and I didn't know that her father was American, and getting to learn all that, and do some research, and I think, like, I watched PBS as a kid, so we got a lot of that BBC, so I can remember Hercule Poirot and like watching that as a kid, but I don't think I really ever read her until like middle school or high school. But I was really excited, and I've had such a good time.
What about the different accents, Tori? How many accents did you have?
Yeah, well, I like the German accent because I kind of like to do accents, but I'm not very good at the Irish, as we've discussed. But I love to do British accents and different, I tried to be different British characters, like high class, or, kind of snobby when she's talking about the 3 billion books, and then I like to be the Cockney band member. So now I love doing accents. That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
I'm so bad at British accents that we had to change that one guy to Scottish.
Great,
But it was great. I love Scottish accents.
It's great, Scott.
You're good at them.
And then what about your accents, Stuart?
I was never good at accents. Ever. I just was never really that great at accents. So I mean, and that's kind of part of the reason why I agreed even to be in this show, because I wanted to, sort of stretch my abilities there. The last accent I used that was any kind of good was Nigerian for Raisin in the Sun, and luckily I have Nigerian in-laws, so I was able to sort of hear what that sounded like.
Oh, that's cool.
But that
would be helpful.
Doing British and French or Belgium or whatever, that was definitely a stretch for me. So I wanted to try that out to see if I could do it. So cool. Hopefully it turned out well. I don't know.
Yeah, you did.
It was good. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Besides Poirot with the mustache and Archie with the scarf, the flying guy,
the buffing pilot.
I loved. I thought, even though he's of a completely different body build and a completely different ethnic background, he really reminded me of Charles Lawson, the lawyer. I'm like,
Scar and the monocle.
Charles Lawson. He became Charles Lawson.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That was amazing. We tried to work. Rob has that. I don't know what it is. Lizard. What is that thing?
Yeah.
Tried to work that into the show. Is it up there?
Yeah, he's got it. We all know the lizard because the night we were supposed to have our meeting where we met our families and stuff, and Rob brought his lizard, so that we know that lizard very well. He's beautiful, beautiful.
There's actually 2, but they're
that's the one I thought was a frog because because of its
I might get a frog.
Yeah, I like frogs, but that one looks a different coloring and stuff, and that's why I thought it was a frog instead of a lizard. Because your other one's bigger, isn't it?
It's bigger and it's yellower.
Yeah, right.
Oh, it's yellow.
That's what
This one's just kind of gray and green.
Yeah, that's fine. When I first saw him, I said, "Is that a frog?"
Well, I want to end this. Tell the cast and Ann and Carrie about the show that you're producing, directing. Stuart, I can't hear you.
Did
Are
you
you talking
freeze?
to me?
Yeah, Stuart.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Tell about the
What,
show you're doing.
what was the question?
You're doing a show.
And then Two Brothers.
Oh, yeah, yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, I am putting together a sort of a poetry night, poetry monologue, spoken word evening called Black Women Supreme. And I'm pulling together. I've cast an entire cast of African American women here in town to read poetry from for color girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow was enough, and from the pocketbook monologues, as well as some original poetry that they may come in as well. So that's being done in February at Them Two Brothers in the Grill over here on the West Side. It's also a fundraiser for CARE, which is the Call to Action for Racial Equity Coalition. So I'm putting that together. We're going to start rehearsals here probably next week or so to make sure everybody knows their parts and everything. That's what's happening in February 2021. So please, if you're available, come on out and take a look. And hopefully the things will be a little more open by that time. Yeah, it's going to be a really great show, I think. And again, something that just sort of explores and delves into the Black experience, especially Black women.
Is it just maybe one night?
It's just one night.
One performance?
Yeah,
Right.
Mayor Cavalier, I tried to tell Stuart, that we had our own Them Two Brothers up here, and he should travel up here and let us have it too.
I think so. And we would, depending on COVID, we would make the stage area available.
Right.
I think I've enjoyed this as Zoom, but we all miss being live. We all want that to happen as soon as possible. And I don't want to take anything away from my friends and colleagues over in Montgomery and at the Long Center. But as Beach knows, we do have the stage area, and we want to make you all feel welcome here. I was, my career for many years was at West Virginia Tech, and we all hated its closing. We still mourn its closing. And a lot of people focus on that and they say, well, yes, you lost all those jobs and all that economic impact. And that's true. But as a true academician, and that's what the way I think of myself, even though I'm a mayor now, I think what I've missed the most are all of the cultural things that you have on a college and university campus, the plays, the guest lectures, the stuff for the brain outside the classroom. And anything we can do collectively to bring that back to the area, I'm going to be very, very supportive of.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That may be something to consider.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because I love to stop at Them Two Brothers as often as possible.
Carrie, are you doing any stage projects? I know it's hard during COVID. Are you doing anything?
No, my schedule is pretty open right now.
Well, we know where we can find an actress.
Oh, good. Yeah. Write her number down, Beach.
Yeah, she was Lady M, and Stuart was Othello, and Rob was Mercutio. It's the screen is covered in Shakespeare.
That's true. Hey, Tori, can you tell? And Banquo. Tori, can you tell this group about what we're doing next Monday week? What little you know?
Well, yeah, the little bit that I know. I mean, you know a lot more about it than I do. But from my understanding, it is a commemoration, I'll use that word, of the Sandy Hook school shooting. Is it 20 years, Beach? It doesn't seem like that long ago.
I think it's 12.
12. Okay, that sounds more reasonable. I didn't think it was 20. But anyway, all across the country on December the 14th, students are going to be performing plays. They're 10 minutes long, and there's I think maybe 6 or 7 that can be selected from. We've selected 3. And but at the same time, across the country, everyone is going to be performing these plays, and they are actually going to be read. So, for example, my granddaughter is going to play one of the parts, but she doesn't have to memorize the lines. So, but the subject of the plays written by high school students is gun violence, and how they feel about, of course, these kids have all grown up with that in their mind. I mean, so if it's 12 years, these kids from the time they were first grade on had to live with the possibility of school shooting. And so each play has a different theme. But so and Beach can tell you more about how we became involved. But Beach and I have gone to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which I know you guys know, and I wish you would go with us as soon as we can go. It's a fabulous experience, but we met the director of the Shakespeare Theater in Oregon, and the Shakespeare Festival, Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which is world renowned. He is now in New York City. He left Oregon and now in New York City, but so I'm not sure the connection between Bill Rausch and the guy that that you've been contacting. So I'll have to turn that over to you.
Yeah, well, Bill wrote us. Bill was in a show in Montgomery when he was just out of Yale. He remembers Montgomery. We didn't know him then, but we know him now. And so he found out that he was on the board of directors of this program for commemorating Sandy Hook. And he said, how come West Virginia's not involved? You should get Beach and Tori to do it. So we didn't have, we've been planning this a year, and we got emailed 2 weeks ago and said, would you put on shows? So we're going to put them on Zoom on a Monday night. I think the mayor probably has city council, but we'll also probably save it on YouTube or somewhere where people can watch.
14.
Yeah. We'll just have to, I'm still casting, and we're still getting rehearsals set up, but at least West Virginia will have representation, and the program, which is nationwide, it's based in New York, involving Tony Award winners, Pulitzer Prize winners. It's a very high profile project from New York, and we're doing our little part to promote it in West Virginia. So whatever your thoughts are about gun violence, it's just to say, keep thinking about it and keep working on it, and especially with schools. The plays are not that really dour. They're more like what it's like to be a high school student or a middle school student or an elementary student after Sandy Hook, and what it's like to go to school with those thoughts in your mind, and to be a teacher too. So anyway, that's Monday and Monday week, and I will leave our address up. If anybody wants to write, send money. We can't pass the hat, but there it is. If anybody's still watching on YouTube, there it is. And I will bid you fond farewell. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Night, everyone.